The city was alive with noise, honking cars, hurried footsteps, distant chatter. Among the crowd, a man in a tailored suit walked briskly down the sidewalk. His name was William Carter, a self-made millionaire, known for his sharp business mind and ruthless efficiency. To the outside world, William had it all: a luxury penthouse, expensive cars, a thriving company. But deep inside, something felt empty. He barely noticed it most days, pushing through meetings, deals, and phone calls. Yet, at night, when everything was silent, the emptiness was there. That evening, after a long and exhausting day, he took an unfamiliar route home. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the need for fresh air, or maybe he just wanted to clear his mind. As he walked past a dimly lit corner, something made him stop. A sound. Soft, raw, filled with emotion. Music. The notes floated through the air, distinct yet familiar, stirring something deep in his chest. He turned his head, scanning the street until his eyes landed on an old man sitting on a worn-out crate, a guitar resting on his lap. For the first time in a long time, William felt something other than exhaustion. He felt curious. William stood still, watching the musician. The man looked to be in his 60s, maybe older. His hair was gray, his beard untrimmed. His clothes were worn, the fabric thin and frayed at the edges. His shoes had holes in them. Yet none of that seemed to matter. His fingers moved effortlessly over the strings of his guitar. The instrument itself was old, the wood scratched and faded, but the sound was pure. Each note carried emotion, raw and unfiltered. People passed by, barely noticing him. A few tossed coins into the small, dented case at his feet. Most didn't even look. But William couldn't turn away. There was something about the way the man played, his eyes closed, his body swaying slightly with the rhythm. He wasn't just playing music. He was feeling it, living it. William listened, drawn in by the melody. It wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. It spoke of something deep, something personal. A young woman stopped briefly, dropping a few bills into the case, with a smile. The musician opened his eyes, nodding in thanks, then continued playing as if nothing else in the world existed. William felt something stir inside him. A strange sense of familiarity. A feeling he hadn't experienced in years. The melody wrapped around William like a distant echo from the past. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the music sink in. Then suddenly, it hit him. A memory. He was a boy again, sitting on the old wooden porch of his childhood home. The evening air was warm, filled with the scent of fresh grass. His father sat beside him, a guitar resting on his knee. "Music isn't just sound, son," his father had said, plucking a few soft notes. "It's a story. It's feeling. When you play, you don't just use your fingers, you use your heart." William had loved those nights. He'd sit for hours, watching his father's hands move over the strings, trying to copy him, eager to learn. His father would laugh, correcting his grip, encouraging him. For a while, music was everything to him. But then life changed. His father passed away when William was just a teenager. The guitar was left untouched in the corner of his room, collecting dust. Dreams of music faded, replaced by responsibility. College, business, success. He had moved forward, built an empire. But somewhere along the way, he had lost that part of himself. Now standing on a busy sidewalk, watching a stranger play, that long-buried feeling resurfaced. The warmth, the passion, the way music made the world feel different. His throat tightened. For years he had ignored that part of himself, convinced himself that it was childish, impractical. But in that moment, listening to the street musician, he felt something he hadn't in a very long time. A connection, not just to the music, but to who he used to be. The last note faded into the night air. William took a step forward before he even realized what he was doing. He wasn't sure why, but something about this man, this music, pulled him in. The musician glanced up, noticing him for the first time. His eyes were kind but tired. Lines creased his face, years of hardship etched into his skin. "Beautiful song," William said. His voice sounded different, almost hesitant. The old man chuckled, plucking another soft chord. "Been playing it for years, don't even remember where I learned it." William nodded, watching his fingers move over the strings. "You play with a lot of heart." The musician gave a small smile. "Ain't no other way to play." A silence stretched between them. People walked past, lost in their own worlds. But for William, everything else faded into the background. "What's your name?" he asked. "Tom," the man replied, adjusting his grip on the guitar. Been playing these streets for a long time now. William hesitated. He didn't know why he felt the need to ask, but the words slipped out anyway. Why the streets? Tom exhaled, as if the question carried weight. Life's funny, ain't it? He strummed a few soft notes, his voice thoughtful. Had a band once, used to play gigs, travel, thought music would take me somewhere. William listened, drawn into his story. But life don't always go the way you plan, Tom continued. Had some bad luck, lost some good people, then my health went south, and well, here I am. He gestured around as if the city streets were his stage. Despite everything, there was no bitterness in his voice. Just acceptance. And you still play? William asked. Tom's smile returned, faint but genuine. Always. Ain't about where you play, it's about why. William felt his chest tighten. He understood that, more than he wanted to admit. For years, he had chased success, believing it would bring fulfillment. But standing there, listening to this man, he realized something. Tom hadn't lost his passion. William had. William reached into his pocket, feeling the smooth edges of his wallet. He had done this countless times. Tipped a street performer, given a donation, moved on. But this felt different. He pulled out $100 bill and held it out. Here, he said. Tom looked at the money, then up at William. He didn't reach for it. Appreciate it, Tom said slowly. But I ain't playing for charity. William hesitated. This wasn't the reaction he expected. Most people would take the money and thank him. But Tom just sat there, his fingers still lightly resting on the guitar strings. I don't mean it like that, William said. I respect what you do. Tom studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. He accepted the money, tucking it into his pocket. But there was no excitement in his eyes. William felt a strange frustration. $100 was nothing to him. But he wanted to do more. He just didn't know what. What do you need most, he asked, the question surprising even himself. Tom chuckled, shaking his head. Son, I could give you a whole list. Roof over my head, food on my table, a doctor who doesn't ask for payment up front. He strummed a soft chord. But none of that's why I'm out here. William frowned. Then why do you play? Tom sighed, looking down at his guitar. Because it's who I am. I may not have much, but I still got music. Long as I can play, I'm all right. William felt a lump in his throat. He had spent years trying to fill an emptiness inside him, with money, with success, with material things. But this man, who had nothing, still held on to the one thing that mattered to him. Then an idea hit him, a real idea, something that could change everything. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. He held it out. Meet me here tomorrow, he said, pointing at the address. Tom raised an eyebrow. And what's this? William smiled for the first time in a long time. A chance. Tom stared at the business card in his rough, calloused hands. The paper felt expensive, something far removed from his world. He squinted at the address. This some kind of joke? William shook his head. No joke. Just show up tomorrow. I'll explain everything then. Tom hesitated. Life had taught him not to trust things that seemed too good to be true. But there was something in William's voice, something steady, something real. After a long pause, Tom sighed and tucked the card into his pocket. All right, he said. Guess I'll see what this is about. The next day, Tom stood outside a towering glass building, shifting nervously on his feet. He had barely slept. He wasn't sure why he had come. Maybe curiosity, maybe hope. Before he could talk himself out of it, the doors opened. William stepped out, dressed in a sharp suit, but his expression was different. Less businessman, more human. Glad you came, William said, leading him inside. They walked through sleek hallways until they reached a large professional music studio. Instruments lined the walls. Soundproof glass separated the recording booth from the control room. Tom froze. His heart pounded. What is this? He whispered. William turned to him, his expression sincere. A new beginning. Tom's fingers twitched, itching to touch the nearest guitar. You said you just needed a chance, William continued. Well, here it is. I'm covering the costs, studio time, production, everything. You record your music, no strings attached. Tom stared at him, unable to speak. It was too much, too unbelievable. Why? He finally asked. William exhaled. Because I forgot what music felt like. You reminded me. A lump formed in Tom's throat. For years, he had played on street corners, unnoticed, forgotten. But in this moment, someone saw him, really saw him. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. I don't know what to say. William smiled. Then don't say anything. Just play. Tom stepped into the recording booth, his hands shaking slightly. The studio felt unreal. Polished floors, high-end equipment, walls covered in soundproof panels. He had spent years playing on cracked sidewalks, and his voice competing with traffic and hurried footsteps. Now the silence in the room felt overwhelming. A producer handed him a guitar, sleek and perfectly tuned. He hesitated, running his fingers over the smooth wood. It felt different from his old battered guitar. Yet when he strummed the first chord, the sound was the same. Pure. Honest. William watched from the control room, his arms crossed, his heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't a business deal. There was no contract, no profit to be made. It was something more. Tom closed his eyes and began to play. His voice, rough but full of soul, filled the room. The song was one he had played 1,000 times before, but this time it carried a new weight. A new hope. The producer nodded, adjusting the sound levels. "He's got something special," he murmured. William already knew that. He had spent his life chasing success, thinking it would bring him happiness. But standing there, watching Tom pour his soul into the music, he realized something. Passion was the real wealth, and Tom had never lost it. The song ended, the last note lingering in the air. Tom looked up, his eyes shining. "How was that?" he asked, his voice unsteady. William smiled. "Perfect." For the first time in years, Tom wasn't just playing for passing strangers, he was playing for something bigger. And for the first time in years, William wasn't just listening, he was feeling.